banking, the types of sectors of an economy that benefit from looser economic policy.
I'm going to ask you to do a bit of crystal ball gazing. I know you talk to a lot of investors that invest in not just equities but even in the fixed income market. Yes. India has got about $5 billion worth of flows this year. How do you see it pan out from here? Do you think a major chunk of the FII money could continue to flow into a market like India based on this election trigger?
I think so. I mean, some of the clients that we talk to suggest that they would be prepared to put much more money into India if they get the right election result, as it's quite often referred to. There is a lot of money waiting on the sidelines for a change in the way that the policy is put in place in India. I think an election result on the 16th of May that's very, very friendly towards business and also gives a solid electoral mandate for change is one that will stir up much more investor interest.
Where will that money go? Have they given you a sense of what looks most promising if this positive result that everybody's talking about does emerge on the 16th of May? Are there key areas of the economy that you see a revival in first, or at least in the short term, and therefore you expect that your clients, global investors, will look to allocate money towards those areas of the economy?
Well, typically, I mean, it's a good question. Typically, in that kind of an environment, you would look at the cyclical part of the economy, the parts of the economy that benefit from an improvement in banks' ability to lend, an improvement in greater appetite for investment in the long term. So the industrials, for example, are sectors of the economy you want to look at again. The kind of sectors that benefit from greater access to bank lending.
I know the Fed uses slack a lot nowadays. I'm going to ask you, but there is considerable oversupply in some of those sectors, capacity that is currently not being used at all. So therefore, I ask the question, it's tough to take a call if you have a bunch of industrials where capacity is not being used or where you need to get all the projects that are currently stuck out of the way before any new money can be deployed. Then where do you put your money and hope for that, 6-month pop? Thanks to the positive result.
Well, to be fair, you've slightly answered your own question by using the word restructuring. And I think that's ultimately what would have to happen first, which is that the change in the way that you look at sort of 2 or 3 years down the line allows you to think, well, maybe this part of my business I would offlift to someone else. I keep a core set of assets, and then we would drive the business forward based on a better growth outlook. So I think the restructuring is part of the process of cleansing and building out for the future.
Go ahead, Sonia. Sorry.
Well, no, I just wanted to take that point forward of the cyclical sectors that you pointed out. There's a view in the market that we've gotten in the past that perhaps it's better to stick to some of the election agnostic sectors, ones perhaps like IT or technology that are more linked to the global growth.
Yes.
And we are seeing growth in places like Europe, etc. So do you think that view still holds, that a part of your portfolio should still stick to IT and defensives, or do you think some of that move should happen towards cyclicals now?
Well, we always have a view that you want to have a balanced portfolio, regardless of what stage of the electoral or economic cycle that you're in. So you would want to have exposure to the global markets anyway. Because our view is that you get a global recovery. You are going to get faster growth in emerging markets. You are getting that recovery in Europe, and probably going to get growth of between, say, 2.5% and 3% in the United States and North America. So you want to have exposure to those sectors. But if you are looking at a major change in economic policy in India, you want to have exposure to sectors that will benefit from that change. And so you want to have exposure to the cyclicals too.
Mark, you've only had encouraging things to say about India. What about inflation?
Well, that's a structural issue.
We're hearing all this bad news about a potentially, sort of less than normal monsoon. We know the RBI has been battling this battle for several months now. Are you factoring in a big inflation risk?
I think you've probably got the peak of inflation behind you.
Okay.
I think the way in which the new administration of the RBI came in and determined that exchange rate stability was not #1 policy objective. It was inflation stability, or a low inflation objective. That has actually done a lot of good. So I think the peak of inflation is probably behind us. But the way in which you bring it down depends on whether it's an economy growing too quickly or having no slack, as you said earlier on, or whether it's an issue of supply side bottlenecks, as you have in the distribution network for the food industry. That takes a long time to bring down, and that's difficult.
Okay, we've got a busy earnings season going on, Mark, and the TVS numbers are on the screen, so we just wanted to alert our viewers to that. Net profit coming in at 52, that's versus 52 crores, that's versus an expectation of 80 crore rupees, and that is disappointing. Sonia's going to run through those numbers and bring you some analysis in just a bit, but I have a couple of questions still on my list for you, Mark, and that has to do with what's the Fed going to do tomorrow night?
There'll be another taper of 10 billion US.
So they're going to stay the course?
There's no reason to think they won't. The economic numbers have been consistent with them continuing to reduce by 10 billion every Fed meeting. And there'll be further communication from Yellen on the need to keep interest rates for as low, to keep interest rates as low for as long as is necessary. So really no change effectively. So
we see the US 10-year somewhere between 2.65 and 2.75 for the next few months to come at least, because everyone now seems to have pushed their expectations of a rate hike towards at least the end of 2015, if not the beginning of 2016.
Generally, markets looking for around about the third quarter of 2015.
Third quarter?
Which is where we've had it for the last 9 months. I think we got that one quite
And this 10-year
well
yield supports that broad expectation?
I beg your pardon?
This 10-year yield at about 2.7% supports that broad expectation?
Yes, that would be about right. We've seen the yield coming down from 3% to about 2.65, where it is roughly now. There is an element of a slowdown in the Fed's policy of raising interest rates, which has clearly been happening since Yellen made her 6-month statement in the middle of March and scared the markets again.
They're calling it, yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I just had one last question for you before we let you go. What is the downside risk to the Indian story?
Politics is one, inflation is another, and those would be the two biggest problems at the current time.
Politics, by politics you mean a fractured mandate?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's pretty much it.
What you need is, you need a change in the way policy is put together in India, because you need to expand the supply side of the economy again, and that requires companies to invest. Companies tend to invest when they have an improvement in the profitability of their outlook.
What would be the downside risk then to the global economy outside of the tail risks in Ukraine?
Ukraine's the big one.
That's it? This year, otherwise you expect steady growth both in the US and Europe?
There are a couple of other ones. Political risk in Turkey is another one.
Okay.
You've seen Erdogan and Gulen going at it again recently. There's potential for political instability there. You've got Chinese banking risk, which is an issue. I think those are the two main ones at the current time.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
It's been great to have this conversation with you. We do hope you make it out to Varanasi so that you have a story to tell when you get back. and we'll try and come back and connect with you right after the elections.
Tomorrow is a good day, actually. Most of the big... all the seats in Gujarat go to polls, etc. So if you move to that side, perhaps you'll get all the action.
And Mark doesn't look like he wants to budge out of Mumbai.
I'm still here until tomorrow evening.
It's 40 degrees centigrade in most of these places. So.
It's what?
It's 40 degrees centigrade in most of these places.
Well, I used to live in Dubai, so 40 is nothing.
So that's child's play for you. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on Closing Bell.